We'll take a comment on healthcare, all of that. But your calls certainly come first if you want to join us at 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. Let's go first to Skype, where Ademo Freeman is on the line and out of jail. Ademo, welcome back to the semi-free world.
Yes, the freer world. I appreciate it. And a big thanks to you guys and everyone else who made that push, which did help me get out of jail.
So for our listeners who are uninformed, let me see if I can recap briefly what has happened over the last 48 hours or so. You were, over the weekend, arrested in Kansas for a warrant out of Indiana. You had kicked off the Cop Block Mobile Accountability for Cops tour in an RV that you have dubbed MAC, which stands for Mobile Accountability for Cops. You and Brian Sumner have been on this tour now for a couple weeks, I think. And it was actually the day before the tour started that you were in Noblesville, Indiana, and you did some chalking outside of a police department there with some of the local cop blockers. The Noblesville cops, they cornered you later on that night. They threatened you. They detained you for about 15 minutes. You got all that on video. That video is up over at, you can watch it over at freekeen.com or copblock.org/Mac-tour. And they accused you of using spray paint or some sort of yellow paint during the actual chalking that had gone on outside of the police station. And, of course, you seemed completely bewildered that would have been the case. It wasn't just you that was chalking. There was a small group of activists that were there chalking, but yet they have now issued a warrant for your arrest, and that arrest ultimately happened in Kansas. Did I get all that correct?
That is correct, yes. And then Kansas police took me to the Johnson County Detention Center, where I spent the last day and a half. What I thought was felony charges, and that was the big kicker to most of this for myself, is that the warrant, according to the Shawnee police that were arresting me, was that it was a felony warrant for criminal mischief. And I guess there is such a thing in Indiana, but I was unaware of that until recently, even though it turned out it was only a misdemeanor warrant, which is kind of mind-boggling to some folks because, as you mentioned, we had been on this tour now for 3 weeks. This isn't the first time the police have ran our information, but yet this is the first time I've been picked up for any warrant like this. So it's kind of, I feel the timing might have been kind of convenient to this, knowing that it was a Friday, that I would have sat all weekend without bailing to see a judge.
No,
Yeah.
The police would never do that. Make an arrest on a Friday that they knew that somebody was going to be released on a Monday for. They'd never do that.
Right. I think the time, because it was about 11 p.m. where I'm at Central Time, and that would have been about midnight Eastern Time for Indiana. And as you know from the video over at copblock.org/Mac-tour, that interaction happened around midnight, about 12:30 actually, which means to me that when the police who claimed to have when they arrested me, they claimed to have called Indiana and asked if they were coming to get me, and they said yes. And I'm curious as to who they would have reached at such an hour. And again, about 10 days before that, I believe Brian and I were both ran by the police, which is something I found out while I was in jail. And I wasn't picked up on the warrant. That was when we were chalking the Kansas City Police Headquarters. And that was a Tuesday. And I believe that the difference in that, it's only my speculation, is that on Tuesday in the middle of the day, they reached somebody of higher standing, maybe a captain or a chief, who said no, we wouldn't get him. And on Friday, they reached one of those officers that you may have seen in that video, a sergeant or a shift supervisor, who just so happened to say yes, even though maybe knowing on Monday that would have changed to a no.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're going to be held responsible.
And they did say in the video where they're arresting you that this was a felony. So it's not like that was just some sort of allegation that you made. They said that on video that this was a felony warrant. Turns out it was a Class B misdemeanor. So not even like a jailable, likely not even a jailable misdemeanor.
Right. This is like hawking a loogie on the sidewalk or something.
Well, from what I read, it does have a 6-month up to $1,000 fine, but there is an A, which is a year. And it seems that you would more likely get jailable. I couldn't find I've only done a little research. I couldn't find the last charge in that county for this, but more research will come.
Okay. I was jumping to a conclusion there because in New Hampshire, Class B is not jailable. Of course, we all know that if you don't pay the fine, they'll put you in jail anyway. So
exactly, it's always some sort of threat. But I wasn't aware that it was a felony until 2 hours before my release, and even moments before that I realized I was going to see a judge tomorrow morning. And had I known those two things, I would have most certainly stayed in jail.
But if you had known it was not a felony.
Correct. If I would have known it was not a felony and that I was seeing a judge, because it was my understanding that the judge came in on Sunday, read some paperwork, set my bail, and so I didn't think I was going to see them again for a while. You know, that's the information that was passed me. Your bail's $4,000. Good luck.
The problem is that they don't get, the information you get is half information at best.
It's highly unreliable. Yeah, I mean, information from these bureaucrats, it may have been that the cops thought it was a felony. I mean, they were either lying or, spreading misinformation. And it could just simply be that they were ignorant and they were told.
Either way, legally they could have taken me to jail on the felony or the misdemeanor. It's just unlikely that, like some of the folks had reported, like Brian, that the Hamilton County Sheriff said they would not come and get me for that offense.
Right.
And so my lesson here is to just, if you're going to be an activist and do these things, and I should have long learned this, is to, yes, don't worry about the misinformation that comes from the inside. I know that what we do lands us in jail, and so I should be willing to sit out 3 or 4 days before I get actual good information. And so
part of the problem is that the people on the outside get kind of freaked out, right? Like you're a hero to a lot of people, Ademo. I mean, I know you probably don't want to be, but ultimately, a lot of people look up to you. And they don't know that you can handle it, right? Like, even though they know you've been in jail, they know they wouldn't want to be in that position. And so they're like running around trying to raise the money to get you out as soon as possible, when ultimately all that does is it just enriches the system. There was somebody who is a mutual friend who, I was talking to, who said that this bail bondsman was encouraging them to pay up. And I said, well, of course the bail bondsman's encouraging that. He wants to
Car salesman will encourage you to buy cars too.
He wants to make money. And what was going on was that somebody had said that they'd talked to you and that you had wanted to get bailed out. And I said, well, that's likely because he still thinks it's a felony. But we couldn't, we can't call you to see what you know. So
yeah, exactly. And Brian had thought that a guard was really nice and relayed that message to me, which absolutely never happened at all. No guard came to my door and said, misdemeanor, your friends say it'll be all good when you see the judge on Monday. That would have given me some reassurance. And the 2 times I had the ability to speak to anyone today was for 60 seconds minus their 3-second, recording there at the beginning. And not enough time. But that's when Kate mentioned to me that it was a misdemeanor. And I got that confirmed by a CO, but then had to lock down. And before I got out again to communicate, they opened the front door. And at that point, I had a little bit of blinders on. I wish at that moment I would have had them explain the charges to me again. And then I would have denied bail because I still wasn't 100% sure what I was sitting on. I got conflicting reports. And so.
Well, wait a minute. When you found out you were being released, that means somebody else had already paid for you. Can you deny it at that point? Say, no, I'll just stay. I'll sit here.
I don't know, but I think we would have found out if I would have been fully aware, which I wasn't of until like an hour even after being released. I don't know if they would have said you have to go or they give that money back. Brian and I believe that since they are bailing you out, like I'm not bailing myself out.
Right.
So
you can't control it.
I could refuse that because it could be like a legal stance, right? It could be like a legal defense of some sort.
I don't think you can refuse it. If somebody's already shown up and said, I want to bail Ademo Freeman out, and they put the money forward, I don't think there's anything that you can do to refuse that.
Well, I think that my biggest concern here is that they're locking people up who haven't harmed anyone. I mean, the jail system, I'm not even talking about charging. They could have charged him and put him on some kind of PR bond or whatever, and he could have driven back to Indiana if that's what they in fact wanted to do. But they just throw mud in the water, and you can't figure out what's going on. The United States jail system shouldn't be locking people up that aren't a danger to the public.
All right,
it's a disservice to the taxpayer.
Ademo, can you stick with us? I've got more questions.
Absolutely.
Ademo Freeman, founder of copblock.org. Good news is he's out, but the bad news is he probably would have gotten out tomorrow anyway. So more coming up. It's Free Talk Live. This is Free Talk Live. Maybe you've got a question for Ademo Freeman from copblock.org. He was arrested over the weekend and is now back in the land of the semi-free with the rest of us, no longer inside a jail cell in Johnson County, Kansas. It's Ian and Mark in the studio with you. We also want to invite you to join Mark in real life in Las Vegas coming up in under 2 weeks.
Yeah, I can't believe it's coming up that quick. But yes, at the end of October here, the 29th and 30th, I will be at the Bitcoin Investor Conference. Check them out. They're going to have a really great event. You go to bitcoininvestor.com. That's Bitcoin.